Grace and peace be to you from God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. I've been preaching this text for a long time, and so let's just get it out right away. The biggest question that comes from this reading is, where did the people get their wedding gowns? It's a story. There really is no answer, but we assume that because these people were expected to be weren't originally invited, that the king provided wedding robes and a dress for them. So be at ease on that. I think the point of this story, more and more, is it emphasizes the joy of being a guest, of being nobody who was turned into somebody because they've been welcomed into an in-crowd that they would never believe or imagine they would be a part of. To be able to be hobnobbing with the king and the royal family. It's a story about abundance and fullness and participation. It's beyond what we're used to, or even what we might be able to imagine. It's about God's extravagant grace in the fact that sinners, because of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, are welcomed into the eternal wedding banquet. It isn't what we created, it's how we've been invited. And the invitation by hearing this story is that we would live this parable by experiencing God's grace. It would transform our lives. With all that said, if we actually experienced something like this, I think we would be uncomfortable guests. First of all, there's those crazy wedding clothes that we would have to wear. Who can imagine what that would be like? But more importantly, when you're in a place that you've never experienced before, and you really don't belong there, and you don't know what's going to happen, I can imagine that the guests at first were very uncomfortable. There's a row of forks, and I don't know which one to use. And there's all sorts of glasses and other things, and I don't want to mess up looking like I'm just a bumpkin who doesn't know what's going on. I imagine there's a lot of other things that are going on at this feast that would make them uncomfortable in that same sort of way, because they just didn't have any experience of doing that. And in a lot of times, they would feel like they didn't belong. And yet, as the night went on, they ended up having the time of their lives. And they were changed because they did belong. And by that experience, life looked completely different. And their relation with the king and the royal family was completely different. The king had gone all out, didn't hold anything back, even after the fact that the A-listers weren't going to be attending. And the presence of his son and of the wedding transformed the crowd. And so those ways may have been unfamiliar, and maybe they had even mocked them in the past because they were the outsiders. Now they understood that they had received a special kind of grace. And it has changed them profoundly. They had become the in-crowd. And it wasn't what they thought that was going to be like. But what they understood was the fact that they were recipients of grace and mercy. And that changed everything. If I were Pope, don't expect that coming anytime soon. If I were Pope, especially Lutheran congregations in northeastern Iowa, that there would be occasional times when the Sunday morning communion service would be something so over the top that it probably would make everybody uncomfortable. And I would do that, not because I wanted to make them uncomfortable, but I would want them to experience something different. Something that made them feel like they were outsiders who now were on the inside. And by experiencing all those things that they weren't comfortable with, they would see God working in their midst, changing them from outsiders to insiders, from nobodies to somebodies, God's own children. I say that not because I'm trying to be mean or I'm trying to boss people around. I have done the Christmas morning worship in Bethlehem. I have been to the Easter Vigil on Mount Lycabettus in Athens, Greece. I have been to all sorts of church worship and have experienced things that I have never experienced in a Sunday morning worship service in northeastern Iowa. That's why I say that. Because sometimes those things are uncomfortable. Sometimes they may not even be understandable. But first of all, it graciously puts me in my place, that I am a guest. This isn't about what I do, but what I receive. And what's there is receiving the abundance of God's mercy and grace, and that there are tangible ways to do that. It helps show us what a feast really looks like, not just what we think it might be. Because it wasn't about us. It was about what we received. Some of you have already heard this story. And maybe this whole idea is kind of petty and trite, but I think that it really is profound. Because too often, our default settings are about what is convenient, or what is expected, or what is acceptable, or what is comfortable, or what is expedient. And I don't know if that fully represents the fullness and abundance of what we receive, because the Son who was dead is now alive. And that our future is all wrapped up in the fact that it's going to end up in a marriage feast that will have no end. At home, I embarrassingly tell you that the way we normally eat isn't very attractive. That we use a bunch of old plates that used to contain microwave meals probably from the 80s. We have just about every kind of stadium cup from just about every imaginable stadium in the country. I would never serve anybody with what we normally eat on. But that's the convenience that is there. Maybe at my house you will never experience the fullness of what a good feast looks like, because Martha Stewart doesn't live in our house. But the cross stands empty. The cross that was the symbol of torture and execution. The cross that in reality killed Jesus. And because of his resurrection, all of a sudden now we gold plate crosses, because it's a symbol of new life. It's a symbol that death is defeated. And when you have such good news as that, when you're let in on what that all means, is sometimes we just need to go all out. And so rarely we do. Maybe our teaching and our witness would be different if occasionally we would do those things. So that it wasn't just talk, but that people would actually receive that in what we talk about. That's what I think this story is all about. Outsiders invited in, and what they experienced changed them. And by receiving that, just as I attended these special worship services, that you're lifted up to the point that you understand that the gospel is just bigger than me, or bigger than we. It's about all eternity. All of those things, when we sat at church-wide assembly, I bet half of the people that were in attendance sat there scratching their heads saying, this would never fly in my home congregation, for all sorts of different reasons. But because we experienced it, we were changed. And that's the very thing that I would want for you, that you would receive that uplift. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's the wedding feast of the Son. And we who didn't belong are invited. And there we're rehearsing our future, to celebrate the death of our old self and the resurrection of a new self, clothed in the wedding garments of baptism. And in that process, we would see just what an awesome thing it is to be invited by the King and being in attendance at the Son's wedding. Amen.